It's Bishop on Air, back at it with you. Another live program to keep you updated on what's going on in and around Illinois. And those of you joining the chat room, good morning. Want to remind you, Bishop on Air, the regular news program focused on Illinois happenings at the State House, is going to turn into Illinois in Focus Daily, where we'll give you the top headlines you need to know and some things that may be coming up today, every day, keeping you informed and plugged into what's going on. So what we see here regularly every morning with Bishop on Air Live is going to America's Talking Network on YouTube. So go check that out. All you got to do is subscribe and you will be connected. All right, subscribe and hit that notification bell. America's Talking Network. Go over there now. Hundreds of you already have, which is fantastic, and I greatly appreciate that. We're going to build that channel up and have that be the vehicle for America's Talking Network to take on Illinois in Focus Daily. A lot of you already subscribe to Illinois in Focus, the weekend podcasts, where Dan McCaleb and myself talk about things happening that we're reporting on at thecentersquare.com. Well, the Daily Show is going to do just that and more, with more video from what's happening in Springfield, the state capitol, to one-on-one interviews. So be sure to go over to America's Talking Network on YouTube, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. For those of you out there who still want to see Bishop on Air content, we'll still do some content. I'll definitely do some, today in gun control segments and a variety of other types of deep dives into things, maybe some on-the-road documentaries and those types of things. But it won't necessarily be the morning live program. Who knows? Maybe a weekend we do a live chat or something and hang out. So there's still going to be stuff with Bishop on Air. But that daily news, listen, my full-time gig at the Center Square as Illinois' associate editor really gives me that direct feed into what's going on at the State House, and being able to bring that to you officially as part of the Center Square on America's Talking Network with Illinois in Focus Daily. It just makes sense. So go over to America's Talking Network, subscribe, follow, and click that notification bell so that you can stay updated with what's going on. All right, so coming back, we are going to start Illinois in Focus, and I want to see you over there on that channel as we talk about the governor's bill signing yesterday, a bill signing coming up today, and an interview with Illinois Policy about July 1st. Lots going to be happening with, say, your gas tax and some other things going on. So stay tuned. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. I really do appreciate you guys being here each and every weekday morning. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell with America's Talking Network. With hundreds of bills on Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker's desk, it's going to be a busy summer of bill signings. Welcome in Illinois in Focus Daily for June 26th, this Wednesday. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for being with us as we bring you this daily program to keep you plugged into what's going on. Yesterday, we talked about Governor J.B. Pritzker enacting a new state agency, the Illinois Department of Early Childhood, and the governor making some statements yesterday during a bill signing. And here's some of what he had to share with the creation of this new state agency to deal with early childhood development.
I am truly very proud to usher in the beginning of a new era for early childhood education and care in Illinois as we create the Department of Early Childhood, our first ever unified state agency dedicated to supporting Illinois' youngest children and their parents. Once fully implemented in 2026, this new agency will make life simpler, better, and fairer for tens of thousands of Illinois families immediately, and of course for hundreds of thousands and millions of families going forward.
So if you caught yesterday's program in anticipation of the governor enacting this new state agency, you heard some of the floor debates from the Illinois House when they passed it, from the likes of State Representative Blaine Wilhauer, who raised concerns about, the impact on taxpayers down the road. And he said that anytime you create a new government bureaucracy, the taxpayers may not be the ones winning in this. You had others worried just about the general bloat of government, but there was bipartisan support for this measure. Ultimately, the cost is what a lot of people are looking at, and that cost being $13 million in the state budget that's set to take effect July 1st for this new state agency. A new state agency with an agency director that's going to get $215,000 a year. So what is the state agency doing? The Department of Early Childhood. They're essentially taking some functions from three different state agencies dealing with early childhood development and putting them into this new state agency. So for instance, they're taking a children program with a child care block grant from the Illinois State Board of Education. They're going to administer that. They're going to take over child daycare licensing from the Department of Children and Family Services. Then also another program from the Department of Human Services. So some of these programs are going to be going into the Department of Early Childhood. But what's the initial cost? $13 million. What's the cost going to be to taxpayers going down the line? Governor Pritzker asked about that yesterday.
We allocated $13 million for the creation of the agency. That's something that we knew would be an expenditure. It's hard as you're moving programs from one department to another to really determine exactly how much savings can be realized, for example, by putting programs together that are disparate into one agency. So we think there will be savings ultimately, but it's hard to measure at this point. We're not adding a lot of personnel here. This is not like, and the cost of housing people in one building, for example, or together in various locations, but in one department, isn't that great. So we don't think that there will be a truly large, measurable difference in the amount of money that gets invested as a result of having a new department. But I know there are people who want to complain about, creating a new agency and will that end up costing the taxpayers. I really don't think it will. I think there's real efficiency in taking programs that are disparately located in different departments and bringing them all together. I don't want to make a broad statement. You asked about whether there'd be additional expenditure. I'm mentioning that there could be savings. I don't know exactly, and I think over the next 2 years, as we're putting the department together, we're going to know a lot more.
So again, the governor taking some questions yesterday, and just a couple of the questions were about would this find savings? He wouldn't give a definitive answer, but that's just one of hundreds of bills on the governor's desk. If you look at the Illinois General Assembly's reports page for bills awaiting governor action, you'll see 444 remain on his desk. So it's, again, going to be a busy summer of bill signings. He's got another bill signing event today. It's expected he will enact a pretty large and expansive business tax credit program. And this is coming in House Bill 5005. And this was a measure that started off as an education savings program, but then after some amendments and a pretty lengthy amendment here, you've got changes to the Use Tax Act. You've got changes to the electricity excise tax law, changes to the Illinois Enterprise Zone Act, the River Edge Redevelopment Zone, the Growing Economy Tax Credit, which is EDGE, the Economic Development and Growing Economy Tax Credit, microchip tax credit, these reimagining energy and vehicles in Illinois tax credit. You can go through and see just all of the provisions this does. And even the Illinois Chamber of Commerce, the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, applauding the passage of this. They put out a statement after the measure ultimately cleared the General Assembly back in May. They put out this statement saying that they're looking forward to enactment of this. Said last year was a banner year for economic development in Illinois, and this legislation will allow us to build on that positive momentum and lay the groundwork for Illinois to continue to attract new jobs and economic growth for years to come. Chicagoland Chamber has long advocated for the trailblazing initiatives included in this legislation, including creating quantum research and development and quantum computing campus incentives, which, by the way, could cost $500 million, extending the research and development tax credit, a big win for Illinois manufacturers. They've been pushing for that for a long time, and additional 5 years, strengthening the Reimagining Energy and Vehicles in Illinois, REV Act, and enhancing the film tax credit. These incentives will give Illinois a competitive edge in attracting investments and growing industries for the future. And they applauded the governor and Emerson Economic Opportunity for getting this across the finish line. But State Representative Dan Ugasti in May, before this passed, he said he was going to support this, but he says it does nothing to really holistically address the economic issues in the state of Illinois.
I'll end up supporting this bill, and I suspect many of you will, because I know we need to. We need to try and entice businesses to come to Illinois so our people have jobs. But again, we're approaching this in the wrong manner. We're still doing nothing to fix the business climate in Illinois. That is the underlying problem. Overtaxation, overregulation, high costs from litigation. It's all out there.
So again, Ugasti highlighting how there really hasn't been any efforts to address the high taxation in Illinois. And some saw this as really a tax credit carve-out for large companies at the expense of smaller companies. Here's State Representative C.D. Davidsmeyer.
I had the opportunity to debate this last time on the floor, and I'm going to make a similar statement that I made last time. We continue to tax small businesses and individuals so that we can hand out big money to big business. Corporate bailouts, instead of taking care of the real job providers in the state of Illinois that are our small businesses and our individuals. So by voting for this, you're voting for big business bailouts at the expense of our small businesses that are struggling to get by.
So clearly, some interesting conversation. The Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity has declared that this particular measure will bring in tens of billions of dollars in economic development, create tens of thousands of jobs over a set number of years. But it could have a cost of hundreds of millions of dollars in tax credits to the state of Illinois. So will the governor be signing that this morning? It's anticipated, so we'll definitely bring you what he had to say, some questions of this particular particular measure, but maybe some off-topic questions as well. It is Illinois in Focus Daily with you here. I'm Greg Bishop. Thank you so much for taking time with us each and every weekday morning. Be sure to like and subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us, won't you, here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Stand by as we prepare for a live guest with Illinois in Focus Daily. Welcome back to Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, and one thing we just heard in the previous segment was State Representative Dan Ugasti making this statement about Illinois' business climate.
Overtaxation, overregulation, high costs from litigation. It's all out there.
So again, high cost from litigation, overtaxation, and just a burden on businesses, and that's what a lot of at least the minority party in the state of Illinois see happening. But a group that's been watching this for a long time, highlighting the impacts it has on the economy, highlighting the impact it has on population in the state of Illinois, is the Illinois Policy Institute. And joining us to talk more about that and also some things that are coming up for taxpayers, beginning with the new fiscal year that starts July 1st in Illinois, Dylan Sharkey joins us. Dylan, thanks for taking time with us this morning. Give us, I guess, your rundown here of all of the things that Illinois taxpayers are going to be having to face come July 1st.
Sure. Well, Greg, July 1st is New Year's Day in Illinois in terms of the budget, and our New Year's resolution every year is always a slew of new taxes. And this year, Illinoisans can expect $1.1 billion in new taxes for the upcoming budget. Governor J.B. Pritzker originally asked for around $900 million in new taxes, and state lawmakers said, well, we'll raise you $200 million like it was a game of poker, except the only difference is both sides are playing with taxpayer dollars, not their own.
So here we are with the budget that passed, the state's largest budget, $53 billion in excess. When you work in the federal tax dollars that are coming to Illinois, it's $125 billion. And I think that's really the number people should think about as to how much your tax dollars cost to run Illinois. But talk about, I guess, the comparison of Illinois to not just the rest of the country, because we can look at California, for instance, all the way over there on the West Coast, but what about Illinois in the Midwest? What's the say the gas tax comparison to the likes of Missouri or Kentucky or Indiana or some of the other corporate environment taxes? How does Illinois compare to all of those other states?
Oh, we rank number one, and not in the number one the way you'd want to be ranked. For example, you mentioned us trailing California in many ways, and the gas tax is just an example of that. We have the second highest gas tax, state gas tax in the nation behind only California. When you add up what people pay in gas taxes at the federal, state, and local levels, Illinoisans pay the second most in gas taxes in the nation to only California, obviously the highest in the Midwest by far.
Dylan Sharkey with us with the Illinois Policy Institute talking about July 1st and a slew of new taxes coming into effect. We've talked about the doubling of the gas tax back in 2019 and the addition of some kind of increase tied to inflation. What are Illinoisans, or at least motorists, filling up in Illinois? Because a lot of people have to pass through Illinois, including trucking companies. I'm sure some of them probably try to tally getting from the west side to the east side of Illinois, trying to not fill up. But what on average are people going to have to pay more on top of what they're paying now after July 1st?
Well, even a 2-cent increase, which is what we are seeing on July 1st, is going to go up to 47 cents from 45.3. And for the average person, that could cost you an extra around $180 a year, but that depends on how much gas you use in a year. And specifically for this upcoming holiday weekend for Independence Day, people should really be mindful of how much they have left in the tank and how far can they get with their gas before they need to refill up. If you can get to another side of the Illinois border in any direction, really, with the same tank before you fill up again in Illinois, I would do so because that could save you some extra holiday cash.
Dylan, there's a lot of opposition to the idea of freezing the state's gas tax, even when it was done for the 2022 fiscal year. I believe that the engineering companies were opposed to that. They may see this, close to $3 billion of increased motor fuel tax as a big win. But is that money needed? And how is that money, is it going to be used efficiently in the state of Illinois when it comes to the cost of employment for prevailing wage and things along those lines? So how do you balance that, right, with the economic activity that engineering groups say, hey, this money's going to create, it's going to better the streets and the roads and the bridges and everything, with the economic impact it has on taxpayers filling up at the pump?
Right. Well, you mentioned it earlier. The total budget is around 53 billion. I believe it's about 15 billion higher than Governor Jay Pritzker's first budget. So the state is spending, that's not a disputable issue. And it'd be one thing if we had just the second highest cash taxes in the country, but we also have the second highest corporate income tax rate and the second highest property tax rate. So it's one thing just to be at the top of one ranking, but Illinois being consistently in the top for all of them goes to show you that people are losing out in multiple ways.
Dylan Sharkey with the Illinois Policy Institute joining us live here with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, and Dylan, we talked a lot about the gas tax. That's just because everybody fills up at the pump. Not everybody does sports betting, though. That's another tax that's going up July 1st. Talk about that and who that really impacts, because the governor says this is not impacting those who place bets in sports books.
Right. So sports betting, the tax hike is a huge component of this new budget. It is 200 million of the 1.1 billion in new taxes. And Governor Jay Pritzker said that it won't affect people directly, and it won't. What it does is it raises the amount that sports books have to pay up of their winnings. And now these major companies, DraftKings and FanDuel, they have come out and said that as a result of this new tax hike, it is currently a 15% flat rate. It will change to a progressive rate from anywhere from 20% to 40%, depending on how much a company brings in. And one of the consequences of that is they say their users on their apps are going to see fewer promos and bonuses that they would normally benefit from right now. You may see them all the time in commercials. It could be a promotion to sign up and you get $100 in free bets, or bet five, chance to win this. They argue they're going to see less of that in Illinois. And also, you might see people just bet not as much. And not this to say that it will go down, but that the revenue could be below what lawmakers are expecting. For instance, in fiscal year 2022, the state brought in about 142 million in revenue, but then in fiscal year 2023, it went up by just 1 million. So 142 to 143. So the growth has kind of cooled off. It's still a massive amount of money, don't get me wrong, but as far as change per year, it has kind of dwindled down. So I don't know what they're expecting to see as far as growth in the future.
Dylan Sharkey with the Illinois Policy Institute with us. July 1st, various new taxes kicking in, some part of the budget, some part of a plan from 5+ years ago. But obviously, this is going to be directing some of the taxation coming from one particular industry, and that's the gaming industry. We talked about sports betting, but also talk about the issue of video gaming terminals, getting an additional tax on them, and what that means for places like Springfield that have a lot of video gaming terminals versus places like Chicago that have zero, but multitudes more population.
Right. So when we think of video gaming, people think of slot machines and casinos, but this is largely outside of casinos. This is at local bars and restaurants. So it's not like people are committing on going to a casino, taking the trip to do it. This is a place that's probably very close to your home that you frequent regularly. And so the temptation is definitely there. And we've seen that in 2023 alone, Illinoisans lost a little more than $2.5 billion to video gaming machines. And the state's aware of that and saying, well, we can maybe bring in a little bit more. So there is a 1% increase hitting on July 1st on video gaming taxes. And compared to sports betting, it's much more of a moneymaker. Sports betting is around, few hundred million, but video gaming is 2 to 3 times more. It's closer to the billions, honestly, in revenue.
Dylan, there's also the hotel tax that's going to impact certain bookings online for hotel rooms. But there was also the cap on retailers' discount. Retailers pushed back against that. You've got the interchange fee issue that I'm sure we'll hear more about that as well when it comes to possibly having to swipe twice for goods, and then no interchange fee on the taxes or on tips. But that's another interesting component of the budget that's coming up, and let alone a whole host of other spending priorities that the supermajority at the Illinois State House and the governor have laid out and enacted for July 1st. Greatly appreciate you taking the time with us here with Illinois in Focus and giving us a bit of a rundown of what's going on with this July 1st new tax scheme that's going to be impacting some sectors in the state of Illinois. Appreciate you.
Of course, Greg. Thank you.
All right, it is Illinois in Focus Daily. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and join us each and every weekday morning here with Illinois in Focus and the Center Square on America's Talking Network. U.S. Surgeon General announcing that firearm violence is a public health concern, and you've got some reaction pouring in on that issue. Welcome in. It's Bishop on Air. Thanks for being here. And those of you who tune in regularly to Bishop on Air, a reminder that we're going to be transitioning the live program each and every weekday morning to America's Talking Network, where you can get the latest on Illinois and states across the country from the center square. So go to America's Talking Network on YouTube, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. At some date certain here in the future, the live Bishop on Air program is going to be moving to America's Talking Network with Illinois in Focus daily. Some of the things we talk about, of course, focus on Illinois. Other things, obviously, dealing with the Second Amendment, which a lot of you have questions continuing on about that. So let's hear what the Surgeon General had to say about firearm violence. This was published yesterday through the U.S. Surgeon General's YouTube channel.
Hello, I'm U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy. Today, for the first time in the history of our office, I am issuing a Surgeon General's advisory on firearm violence. It outlines the urgent threat firearm violence poses to the health and well-being of our country. As a doctor, I've seen the consequences of firearm violence up close in the lives of the patients I've cared for over the years. These are moms and dads, sons and daughters, all of whom were robbed of their physical and mental health by senseless acts of violence. Unfortunately, the problem has continued to grow. 54% of adults in America report that they or a family member have experienced a firearm-related incident, whether they've been personally threatened with or injured by a firearm, lost a family member, witnessed a shooting, or shot a firearm in self-defense. Many of these harms are disproportionately felt in our communities. Black individuals endure the highest rates of firearm homicides, while suicide rates are highest among veterans, older white individuals, and younger American Indian and Alaska Native people. What is especially devastating is how this has affected our children. Firearm violence has become the #1 cause of death among children and adolescents, more than car accidents or drug overdoses. I've sat with parents who've lost a child to firearm violence. I've listened to their stories and felt their pain as they describe the holes in their hearts. As a father, I know a parent's worst nightmare is to lose a child, to feel like you can't protect your child from harm.
So again, that's the Surgeon General talking about firearm violence being a public health concern. And he used this chart, which is kind of interesting, that is posted on their website as well. And it talks about firearm violence, the leading cause of death for children and adolescents. All right. So again, children and adolescents. But you look there and it says 1 to 19 years of age. So some people point at that and say, well, those 18 to 19 are not children. And you can see where some of the consternation comes from all of this. But there's obviously reaction to this. We'll share some of what Governor J.B. Pritzker had to say yesterday here in Illinois. But the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms, they released this statement yesterday. Gun ownership is not a disease, it's a protected right. So this coming from this organization saying, responding to the U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy's outrageous claim that gun-related violence is a public health concern. The Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms declared gun ownership is not a communicable disease. It's a constitutional right. They say that this is one more effort by the Biden administration to demonize gun and the law-abiding citizens who own them. According to Alan Gottlieb, the chairman of the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms, he says the problem with violent crime is not that it is a disease, but a symptom of failed leadership from the White House and down. From the day he took office, Joe Biden has treated gun owners like social lepers. He considers us second-class citizens who should be ostracized as though we are a spreading plague. So, again, that's the comments from the Second Amendment community from at least the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. Governor Pritzker was asked about this yesterday at his bill signing ceremony, and this is some of what he had to say in response to the U.S. Surgeon General saying that gun violence, quote unquote, gun violence, is a public health crisis.
Well, I'm proud that Illinois has led the way in this regard. I do think it's important to recognize that this is, an area where we need to put new emphasis. Remember, I think one of the reasons for a declaration like this is to remind people that early intervention, just like with healthcare, early intervention, what do we say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure? That is true also when it comes to gun violence, that making sure that we're making the proper investments early into communities where we know there is a problem with violence, making sure that we're deterring people from getting engaged in things that they shouldn't by providing jobs, by making sure we have violence intervention programs that are funded. I would just point to one other thing. You may recall that back in, I think it was 2020 or 2019, there was a study released by Northwestern University that showed that one of the reasons for the uptick, significant rise in crime in Chicago and across the country, but they were talking particularly about Illinois and Chicago, was the disinvestment under the prior administration, I'm talking about the administration of Illinois, from those early intervention programs in those communities. The fact that we had no budget for 2 years, many of those violence interruption programs actually had to close. And then you saw some of the results of that with the rise in violent crime across the city. So I think that's something to keep in mind as the Surgeon General has made his declaration and as we move forward in the kinds of programs and investments that we make in the state of Illinois.
So still some questions, though, about what those investments are, the impact on taxpayers. According to analysis of the state budget that's about to go into effect, you've got, $185 million going to the Department of Human Services to be distributed to approximately 200 different organizations for violence prevention and youth summer jobs programs. Again, that's $185 million for violence prevention grants and youth summer jobs programs going to 200 different organizations. How does the governor ensure that that money is going to be spent efficiently and wisely and actually get true outcomes from that level of spending? A question he was asked about yesterday.
I think the great news is that there are private, independent folks who are monitoring things like this. If you look at CRED, for example, in the city, they've looked at the communities where they're making investments and where other investments have been made, and they've watched the violent crime numbers come down in those communities as we invest with those programs. The state of Illinois does. And so we think that it's very important to track and trace what happens with the dollars that we put into those programs, and it does prove to work. And then you see the reverse of it in the years prior. Take the money away, violence increases.
So the governor taking questions yesterday. He could take more off-topic questions today, but up in Cook County, you've got the Firearms Policy Coalition announcing their filing in the 7th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals in Veramontes v. Cook County, which is the Cook County ban on assault weapons, semi-automatic firearms that the letter of the law has defined as, quote, assault weapons. But Veramontes, in this case, with the Second Amendment being a question here, going to the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals, FPC President Brandon Combs says their brief makes clear Cook County's authoritarian ban on protected arms is totally unconstitutional. And they say they'll continue to fight forward to oppose this ban and all others like it and make sure that they're eliminated. But one of the things they do is they also highlight some of the arguments that Justice Sonia Sotomayor made about the ATF and pretty much admitting that semi-automatic firearms are in common use. So interesting to see that conversation happening yesterday as well. I'm bringing it to you here with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Thank you so much for taking time with us. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for Illinois in Focus Daily with America's Talking Network and the Center Square. there's so much going on. One last segment for you dealing with the non-citizen migrant crisis and the Pritzker administration announcing even more state-supported, taxpayer-supported shelters for, quote, new arrivals. Welcome back, Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. And we may hear more about this with the governor today during Q&A. He's doing a bill signing ceremony, so I imagine that this announcement that came in the afternoon hours will likely get some attention. Let's go through this announcement. So here is the headline from the Pritzker administration. They announced additional state-supported shelters for new arrivals. State-supported shelters add capacity to house up to 2,000 people. And it goes on to talk about 2 new shelters operated as part of the city of Chicago's existing shelter system will prioritize families as they transition into independent living. This is in addition to a state-supported shelter in Little Village, bringing the total of state-supported and funded shelters, again, taxpayer-funded shelters, to around 3 with capacity for 2,000 people. The latest additions, the state says, to shelter capacity advance the state's commitment to a joint funding plan with Cook County and the city of Chicago to address the ongoing humanitarian crisis presented by the arrival of 43,000 new arrivals from the U.S. southern border. A statement from the governor says, in Illinois, we're implementing our comprehensive data-driven plan to improve our response to the ongoing humanitarian crisis and amplify the effectiveness of state, county, and city investments. The additional temporary shelter will ensure that shelter capacity and wraparound services remain accessible to asylum seeker families. Now, the governor is consistent in saying that these are asylum seekers, but are they all true asylum seekers? Again, a question that critics say is not the case. So how do you balance that with the governor's statements? But all of this is part of $478 million, an additional $180+ million. That's all in the new fiscal year budget that starts July 1st. Those are tax dollars going into these particular operations, let alone the non-citizen migrant health care taxpayer subsidized, the welcoming centers. Altogether, it's $900 million that's expected to be spent on these issues heading into the new fiscal year that starts July 1st. But State Representative Adam Niemerg asked about this, and you can read at thecentersquare.com his thoughts. He told the Center Square that there's an issue here. He explained that legal migrants in Illinois are being put last, and that Illinois taxpayers are being put last.
If this was about compassion and humanity, they wouldn't be doing this, because we're putting Illinois citizens last. We're putting folks, veterans, homeless, folks in the inner cities that are struggling to make a living, trying to pay grocery bills, get to work every day. We're putting them last.
So State Representative Adam Niemerg concerned about the continued spending on this. And a city resident who's a legal migrant from outside of the United States raised concerns. You have this individual who's from Brazil talking about how they fought up in Chicago with the Gage Park facility and worried that they're going to see the chaos come back with these new migrant facilities. So Cassie Almeida, resident of Chicago, talking about this as well with the Center Square.
Smoking weed 24/7, being on the trees here outside, having sex in the park in front of kids and everything. I think it's a huge, huge mistake of him trying to open more shelters.
So clearly concerns continue to rise on this issue. We'll see what the governor has to say if he's asked about it at an event in Chicago this afternoon. All right, it's Illinois in Focus. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell for regular updates at America's Talking Network on YouTube. And we'll see you back here for another live edition tomorrow with Illinois in Focus Daily. All right, guys, greatly appreciate you being here. Again, I don't know when the date is, but there is going to be a date coming up where Bishop on Air, the live program you've come to each and every weekday morning, is going to be only on America's Talking Network. It's a huge step that we're taking at thecentersquare.com. And I think you're going to be glad that you went over and continued on your support here so that we can keep you informed, quick, digestible, getting you going with your day, and letting you know on relevant issues impacting you and your pocketbook in Illinois state government. So be sure to follow. We're still going to be doing some stuff here with Bishop on Air, I promise. But at a date certain, that live program, it's going to be through America's Talking Network. So very excited for this. So like, subscribe, hit that notification bell over there. Stay with us here with Bishop on Air, because we'll do some documentaries. We'll maybe have some live chats that we can hang out with. Maybe I do a regular Today in Gun Control segment to keep you guys updated what's going on in the Second Amendment space. So all of that here with you. I greatly appreciate you guys' support. It really does mean a lot. So have yourselves a great rest of your Wednesday. I got to get out of here. We'll get back to work, all right? Make it happen.